Next, I'm going to show you how to do some crazy timing things. So, if I hold X for a little bit, then it goes tapped. If I hold it longer and then let go, then it says it was held. And if I double press X, then double tap kind of has a pulse. So I'm going to try and recreate that. First we need a controller sensor. Okay. And we'll put it into remote control mode. And we'll use X, and I'll just put a node in. A node. So if you want it to just be part of your logic and not actually a port going in or out, you can tweak it and set it to no port, and then it'll just be like a through port, a through node, and let you can like power this on or off, or just use it to give an icon to a signal going through it or whatever. For this, I'm just gonna plug that in there so I don't have to keep on tweaking that every time I want to use the X button. We're going to use a timeline, so you could use like a timer and say, oh, how long has the X been held for, and then compare it to see if it's within some certain range, if it's below or above it or whatever. I'm going to do it the timeline way because I like my recent passion is using timelines for everything, especially like ranges of numbers, which we will see momentarily. So when we start holding X, we want that to start playing, and for this we'll put it onto once mode. So if I play and then I hold X, then it's playing like that. But we want it to let's put on a keyframe. And what do we want the keyframe to do? We want it to power a switch. Cool. So we'll leave that off normally, and we'll turn it on with the keyframe. And we want this to be when we tap the button. Cool. So now we can expand this. I'm just using up or down to scale it, and then I can use these side bar things. So if I expand it out a bit, so we're just going to worry about within 1 second. So if we let's see what that does first. Okay, so hold X, and while it's in that zone, then it's turning on this this switch down here. But we only want that to really happen when we let go. Then we want it to switch on the tap button. So what we're going to do is we're going to put on a timeline. You could do this a slightly different way, but for a bit later, it's much easier. For more complicated things, it's much easier to have this timeline. So I'll just put this on the other timeline, which seems a bit pointless because now if you play time, it does the exact same thing. However, we can now turn off this nested timeline, and the outer one will still happen. It will still play through and everything. Then we can get a signal manipulator, plug that in there, and turn that into a pulse. Oh no, wait a minute. We don't want to use pulse. We want to use custom remapper pulse at off. So when we stop holding X, this will send out a pulse, which will turn on the timeline for a frame. So let's see what that does. So I'll play time, and then I'll hold X, and the keyframe isn't doing anything. But if we let go during that timeline, it's kind of hard to see. I'll zoom in over here. Then it's pulsing that that switch on like that. See. So that's cool. So now we have, if we let go within this window, then something will happen. And we can do, maybe we want to say if we held it for a certain amount of time. So let's copy those two. So if you copy a keyframe and the thing it's affecting at the same time, then the old keyframe will affect the original, like the original keyframe will affect the original switch, and then the copy of the keyframe will affect the copy of the switch. So they'll be separate like that. So let's just put this over here. So if we hold it for this amount of time within this range, then it will make this one flicker, and this one will be for when we have held it like that. So now if I hold it until it gets to the end, then that one flickers, but the tap one doesn't. And if I hold it for a short amount of time, the tap one flickers, but the held one doesn't. And because it's on once mode, it resets itself every time it is powered on again. So that's why it keeps on resetting to the start of the timeline. However, now we have, so for the held one, if we let go in that range, then that flickers like that. But if we hold it for longer than that and then let go, it doesn't do the thing. This is because if we hold it, then you can see the it's better clear in here. The playhead is right near the end, and that means because this stops at the end, it's actually past this point, because the playhead actually wants to power the thing on the immediate right of the playhead itself. So once it's at the end, it doesn't play the thing immediately to the left, which is this thing. It just plays nothing because there's nothing to the right. So, but we can fix that by grabbing the right end of this keyframe and just dragging it further across as if it were going past the end of this timeline. And you can see it actually is. But we also want to make sure the end of this timeline is past that as well. So now when we hold it, let's just reset that. Now when we hold it, play time. Then it goes to the end, but it's still over that that keyframe. Once mode, it kind of turns itself off when it gets to the end. So now we need to go in sustain mode. So for this, we actually need to do a bit more logic over here so this works. So because we're sustaining, we need to manually reset it. So we're going to use a selector for if it's meant to be playing or if it's meant to not be playing, so that we can do different bits of logic for each. So a selector has many ports like this, many channels, and only one of them sends a signal, and we can set it in different ways. So if we plug the X button through this node, it always starts off on channel A. So if we put it into channel B and power that, then channel A will be won't be powering the timeline, so that's fine. And then when we start holding X, it will go to channel B and power the timeline. Cool, so let's see if that works. So I'll start holding X and it's powered like that. And it will just stay on that channel forever. So if I hold X, even if I let go of X, it's still staying on channel B. So we want this timeline to process what is going on in here and then reset itself over here. So we'll have a switch to reset stuff, and we'll have a keyframe that turns that on, and we'll call that reset. Then we'll put this into the nested timeline, because we already have a way of knowing when this part has been processed, because it turns on the keyframes that's inside here. So if we just put this like that, then it will also power this one, which will also reset the timeline as it goes. So now for the actual resetting part, we'll take a wire from channel A and put it into restart timeline. So when we start holding it, it'll go channel B and power the timeline. When we stop holding it, it'll turn on this, and then that will turn on this, which will put it onto channel A, which will reset the timeline. So it's a bit complicated, a bit involved, but once you've got this little part here set up, you can use it for all sorts of stuff. So, alright, so the tap works. If you look over there, tap works, and holding works. And if we keep holding it, does it work? It does. Awesome! I'd like to give a big thank you to my supporters who made this tutorial possible. Kolvitzer, Kelbiones, Jack Power, Hyperdream Surfer, Mobius DT, X Cantaloupe, Prism Knight 90, Martinity DK, The Common People, Rev Player, and MDKD 99. Thanks everyone. Thanks for watching. If you'd like me to continue making these daily tutorials and helping creators across the internet, you can support me through the link in the description. Thanks for your consideration, and I'll see you in the next one.